The gavel slammed down on the judge's bench with a cracking sound that reverberated through the courtroom. I, who was then in my late 20s, had been summoned to jury duty and was reminded by the judge himself of the moral, ethical, and community responsibility that I had by allowing my person to stand for duty. The court clerk gave as an example to be excused from jury duty this scenario. If you are the sole proprietor of a bicycle shop on which you rely for your income, unsupported by a company or any other source of income, you may approach the bench and ask to be excused. There I was, looking up, looking way, way up. And your excuse was the demand? I teach a class of piano students, and that's my sole source of income. Well, except for a church job where I play the organ on Sunday morning for services. The response came booming back. Young man, this court does not meet on Sundays. The reverberation, the space, the experience of that room was burned into my brain, and that present moment with frantic synaptic activity that has made the experience a vivid past memory to this very day. It reminded me of the grand old banks where I lived in Calgary, Canada, built to represent and hold power over us, I suspect. This bank certainly did. Every footstep resounded like a miniature clap of thunder, and I was intrigued by the swirl of sound that remained and then died away slowly. Or the pulpit, to this very day in most churches, raised to a position of authority. Yes, many would suggest that it was to improve the sight line, but approach one and see what you think. Sunday is of no consequence. Nonetheless, you are excused. The judge seemed to bellow the words as if to make me feel smaller and less worthy than I already felt. The sound of his voice was still ringing in my ears as I drove home, humbled by the experience of power in which I had been caught as an unwilling participant, now a permanent and powerful past memory. Come Sunday, and I had just finished playing the prelude for the service from my rather lofty position, front and center in a rather large church. The organ console was in a conspicuous position of prominence and power from whence I was able to peer down on and at the congregation. As the reverberation of the final chord died away, I glanced again at the service calendar, only to be reminded that the service was a baptism and that the first reader of the first lesson was none other than the judge. The tables were turned, and as I slowly rotated the 180 degrees to get a better view, he was now in my sight, and obviously remembering who I was, looked way, way up and gave a stately and considerably gracious bow of the head, for this time I held the trump card. May we have track 1, please? Proper good afternoon to each and every one of you, and what a delight to be here to speak to you about a musician's concept of memory and architecture. What you have just heard was an improvisation recorded live by the great American organist, conductor, teacher, and I consider humanist Dr. Jerry Hancock, who died in Austin, Texas this past January. I remember him. I put him back together in my thoughts and imagination of him, as well as call to remembrance his brilliant playing and improvisation with a mixture of great warmth and a genuine sense of profound loss. And the instrument that you have just heard is nothing more than an immense object with several thousand pipes that relies on the building for its soundboard. Those of you who are architects give voice to my instrument and have the power within your creative imagination, your neuroscientific sides, and your architectural sides to give the organ in particular the kind of voice that it can and deserves to have. I remember too well the residence time I spent at St. Thomas Choir School with Jerry Hancock for a week of mentoring, and his greeting me with such humbleness when I gave a recital at St. Thomas Church in New York a number of years later. I was in the midst of greatness, and I felt it. It is one of the situations of mystery that is greater than mystery itself, but there I was. The church, many of you likely know it well, is certainly an icon in New York, musically and architecturally, in no particular order. When it was built in a neo-Gothic style, the wonderful new technology of making a stone-like material that could, would, and did absorb sound energy was used throughout the structure. The resulting acoustic was at best poor, and a concerted effort in later years coated the quasi-stone to harden the surfaces and make them more welcoming for music. I am also borrowing from another great American, Dr. W. Paul Jones, this statement about theology, because I need to make sure that you understand where I'm coming from. He says, if we think about something beyond us, something greater than self, and wonder about whatever it may be, we are all acting as functional theologians. So consider yourself so ordained. My work or wondering has centered itself around the sense of mystery in worship and performing spaces, and as a consequence of reverberation characteristics in particular. Through descriptive cases in my own studies and recordings that I have made for us today, I hope to give you a tantalizing taste of how reverberation characteristics play a vibrant role in memory. In my original study, 4 pieces in contrasting styles from different periods in the history of music were soundscapes, as the great American Emily Thompson, acoustic historian, would name them. I commend to you your reading list, her wonderful new book, The Soundscape of Modernity. And I would caution that Dr. Otto should read it with great care because it conflicts, I think, with some of his thinking, but I would love to have a conversation with him after he's had a good read. Emily Thompson's book reflects what I believe is the natural swing of thinking, and I think Dr. Otto would agree with me, that the pendulum of taste in our culture, tinged, to be sure, by social, economic, political, and natural events, that informs that pendulum in ways often unpredictable, if predictable at all. Emily Thompson notes that reverberation, the lingering over time of residual sound in a space, has always been a direct result of the architecture that created it, a function of both the size of the room and the materials that constituted its surfaces. As such, it sounded the acoustic signature of each particular place, representing the unique character, for better or worse, and that is a marriage, of the space in which it was heard. With the rise of the modern soundscape, this would no longer be the case, for reverberation now became just another kind of noise, unnecessary and best eliminated. To a large degree, it was the acoustical environment of the Western Christian tradition that gave birth to Western music. Music was the apex of European intellectual life to the end of the Middle Ages, because the acoustics of music was perhaps the highest evolved of the sciences, and penetrated the conceptual fabric of all other disciplines, from theology to astronomy, mathematics, communications, and the study of human behavior. As reverberant environments began to become less reverberant, music became more complex and complicated to fill in the spaces once owned by decaying resonance. Wallace Sabine, regarded by many as the founding father of modern architectural acoustics, together with other writers, allows that changes in architectural fashion may be reflected in the development of Baroque, classical, romantic, and current idioms and performance practices. Frank Birch Brown, in his innovative book Religious Aesthetics, identified our understanding of music in the context of Christian worship in terms of these basic elements of aesthetic taste. And I'm going to go through them very quickly. Apperception, in which you perceive a sound and put it into some sort of form that you can understand. Appraisal, in which you bring some criteria of judgment. And appreciation, which means that you may be able to value the work without actually valuing it yourself. And I'm going to, this is in the handout, so I'm going to go through it in the order that we need to think of. Now, to those three I have added appropriation and application, which are my two. Appropriation means to take something for your own, to make it your own, and make the exercise truly human. And application is my aesthetics of process. Application takes the four categories and creates the doing of aesthetics. Most of our time is spent in achieving something in an attempt to go beyond what we can currently or presently think of or do. When asked if winning a medal or breaking a record is worth all the time and energy it takes, most athletes will answer yes, but with this caveat. It was the process of getting there that was the most important part of the process. The process of aesthetics. Memory. How often it is that we find ourselves humming or whistling a tune. What is it about a tune, even one that becomes annoying, that we cannot get it out of our heads? The answer is simple enough. Music is a language understood by everyone at some level. As such, it is a powerful mnemonic. It does not require a spoken language to apperceive, appraise, and appreciate. As a musician, I work with four forms of memory that I engage in the present moment. And they are muscle, visual, oral, and analytical. These are all memories which I'm happy to speak to you about or answer questions on a little bit later, but this is one of the most common forms of memory teaching for young pianists that I have found very exciting and very worthwhile. I believe that the auditory sense is dominant, and I think that Dr. Albright might have a stern talk with me after I have finished speaking. Unlike visual experience, therefore, which unfolds in front of and under the control of the viewer, and tends to be articulated from moment to moment, episodically, the listening experience is continuous, ever present, and unavoidable, and by comparison, less susceptible to direct control. With such a distinguished number of architects, neuroscientists, and artists in our midst, I'm willing to risk this, that we experience a building as much, perhaps more, than we take it in visually. Shall I duck? It is widely accepted, as I understand it, that hearing is most likely to be the first and last of life's senses to be experienced. Sound orients us in our world. It provides us with multidimensional concepts of self and others. It is with us and cannot be shut out except by artificial means. And that brings me to past, present, and future memory. For me, memory per se is not of the present, it's only activated in the present. And in this sense, memory is kinetic. It causes us to move. The most obvious movement is into the past, but it has a less acknowledged and more significant function, it seems to me, to move us into the future. It can be planned in a liturgical sense, or rehearsed in a concert hall, or be spontaneous, as in the improvisation that you heard a little earlier. To reach its ultimate value, it needs to be kinetic, causing us to move forward into new memory, what I call future memory. We were born without experience and rely on the collective memory of the community of others around us. You know the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. It is the richness of memory past, collective, individual, and absorbed, that triggers the present and gives hope for the future. The collective memory of community is bequeathed to us at our birth and is our legacy at death. But throughout life, we embellish and enhance the collective memory we have inherited and make it our own. Indeed, memory, in the tripartite arrangement that I have presented, might have its own aesthetic of process, and that was suggested by our after-dinner speaker last night, as you will recall, but that is for another time. Finally, all of you, all of us, artists all, are called to be the village, the community that raises the child we name the creative imagination. So I come to the question, how do reverberation characteristics of two contrasting spaces affect the responses of listeners, past, present, and future memory, to the music? The question does not ask if one space is better than another. The issue is one of preference, not best. In other words, a worship or a concert space is best for the participant if it is the participant's preferred choice. May we have the next two tracks, please? I would like you to listen to these two recordings. The text will be provided, and you're going to see some pictures, and I want you to listen carefully to the acoustic. set of photographs with the next recording, identical in length, but in a different space. I felt set free, I felt freedom, I felt release, just a sense of expression of sheer joy and exuberance. You get the feeling that you're in an awesome space, that it's bigger than you, and yet you are an important part of that space. That seems to be a part of what a cathedral can do. You know, you're put in your place, but then it envelops you, it holds you, it keeps you. Those were responses from some of the participants in the study that I did many years ago. From a note I received from Craig Hartman, whose architectural firm saw to the design of the new cathedral in Oakland, which I commend to you, he writes to me, "In the hand of God was in the design. Nowhere is it more evident than in the sanctuary acoustics. Much as we tried, it was certainly not the result of architectural talent or strategy. Light is something I can work with intuitively. Sound is, for me, a mysterious cocktail of art and science. I hire experts with whom we collaborate in developing from forms and materials that together provide the desired acoustic outcome. So I can elaborate on the process and decisions that led to the final, very successful outcome. But I'm afraid I cannot provide much insight on the strategic process that will always be as positive as this one." Concluding, I would like to say, in research like this, there are often important, urgent, and unexpected things that people have to say. Such remarks are important because as the last thing that they share, they are known as doorknob comments and are the primary thing of importance on their mind. The doorknob comment is the story one needs to tell if one is to be known. So listen with great care to each other and to everyone whose opinions, sentiments, and passionate goals are put in your charge. You have sought, through your incredible creative crafts, to give life and breath to my heart's desire. I hear voices telling me what to do, says St. Joan in George Bernard Shaw's play. I hear voices telling me what to do, and they come from God. They come from your imagination, comes the response. Of course, says Joan. That's how God talks to us. Hear the creative imagination in this 40-second improvisation from St. Thomas, New York, May we have the last sound clip, please? It comes from his creative imagination, was created on the spot. Listen to the stone that's been given new and reverberant life. As close to Hollywood as I ever imagine I will be. So I'm going to take this moment to thank all of you and the Academy for your most gracious invitation.
Now that we are on our most reverberatory and contemplative state, do we have a chance for one question? One quick question? Quick question. I think we're all in a mesmerized state right now.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Yeah.
What was the second space for the...
Of the two choral spaces, it was Saint-Germain in Montreal. A beautiful Romanesque building, all in marble.
Same size?
Same, not quite the same size, but what we did was we put the microphones at exactly the same distance on a mannequin's head, and the candidates who were listening to the recording put a headset on so that they would hear it exactly at the same distance. And I had a technician telling me how fast I had to conduct, and that was tough in a space where I wanted to go and grow and just whoa. And I had to keep it the same all the way through.
Thank you, appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much.